Kara Shalom, welcome to Heinrich Edgecome Art. This is also a very much of a beginner's painting, so it's easy to make. And we are actually experimenting a little bit with baum paper, which is new to us. And it's an interesting paper because it holds the water a whole lot longer than the papers that we are used to. So you will see during the painting that sometimes we try to do some card scratching and things like that, and because the paper stayed wet so long, we had a little bit of a hiccup there. So stay tuned and see what happens. We're going to try to preserve as much of the white of the paper as possible because it has a very beautiful texture. So let's see how this one pans out. The materials used are listed in the description below. And remember to have a cut-up store card ready because you are going to use that as well as an Eradicator brush if you have one. You can make a small sketch if you like, but it's not really necessary. You are basically going to just put your elements anywhere you want to. We sprayed the paper here and there to create a few wet spots, and then just add the ultramarine there for the sky area to show the blue of the sky. And it is very random. Just add it here and there into the wet area and wet your brush to help spread the paint. But try and keep the white, preserve the white as much as possible. Then you are going to have a light side, or a light side and a shadow side of the tree that you have there. So the light side, you can use the Naples yellow on the left, and on the right, to make it a little bit darker, you can use the Van Dyke brown, or a mix of Van Dyke brown and French ultramarine. That also gives you a nice dark color. And you can use a very fine brush here if you want to. It depends on the size of your painting, but a fine brush will do nicely. The trees, the branches should be a little bit squiggly, so use a light hand. Don't press too hard. If you make your branches, then naturally at the tip of the branch, you are going to press a little bit lighter, and the closer you get to the tree trunk, you are going to press a little bit harder so that it becomes a broader stroke. Those two trees are basically on the same plane. But the one on the left is further away than the one on the right. So you can make the one on the left a little bit lighter. You can dab out some of the paint if you want to make it lighter, and that would help to give the distance. Now you are going to start adding all your other colors to make your terrain. And you can use the same thin brush if you want, or you can use a thicker brush, a larger brush. And it is still a dry surface. You're working wet on dry. And as you go, you will see that the more colors you add or the more paint you add, you will get dry brush strokes as we have there. Or if you add one color into another, then they will fuse into each other, as you can see. So adding the blue, adding the red, it is light red, and we are also using Qionacridone Sienna. Those give you the beautiful autumn colors, and the blue actually helps to enhance those autumn colors. You would never think that blue would help you to give autumn, but it does. It gives a kind of a grayish tone to your elements or to your terrain there. Again, try to preserve the white of the paper, but now we are going to try and use the credit card technique. We're going to scrape with a credit card to give a little bit of light. So you are building your pigments, adding as much as you want to, but adding pigment to it so that you can use your credit card to create the rocks or variation in the terrain. And you can also lift the paper and tilt it a little bit, spray it if you don't have enough moisture there, and let the paint flow and create its own little magic. As you can see on the right hand side, it flows beautifully where the water was sprayed. So you can add your colors, build up your terrain there a little bit. We want to create a variation in the terrain color and in what we add to our terrain. So all the beautiful autumn colors, the idea of leaves having fallen down and grass turning more brown because it's autumn, and the darker colors for the shadows. And building all of this will help you when you use your credit card scraping method. Now for us, because we don't know the baung paper very well, when we tried using the credit card as we would normally use it on other paper, it didn't really work. It just pushed the paint around. And the reason is the paper was still too wet. So what happened was just that we made a few deeper scratches on the page. And please remember that when you do make these scratches, they are permanent. So sometimes they will help you to create light, but sometimes they are going to create dark lines. Because if the paper if the paper is too wet, then you only make a scratch mark, like you can see there in the middle, and then the paint will pool there. But on the right-hand side, top right, you can see that it was a little bit drier, and then the lighter marks came through because it pushed the paint away. Then you can add some splatters, maybe clean water or some of the paint. That will definitely help to create a little bit of texture in your terrain. And now that the trees and everything is a bit drier, you can start to layer the trees a bit more and add some more color there and a little bit more shadow. Splattering some water again helps to push the paint away, and it brings back a bit of light into your painting. Now, if you make horizontal marks, then your painting will have a straight lined look. If you make diagonal marks, then it gives a little bit of a slope to your terrain, and that also makes it interesting. So for the trees now, you can use the flat side of the brush. You hold it horizontally to the paper and use the broad side of the brush to add your leaves, just very lightly. And again, use all the colors that you have. It brings variation and it makes it a lot more interesting. The light is coming from the left, so you will have the darker colors on the right-hand side of your tree, even in the leaves and so on, and then the lighter colors, the more yellow colors to the left. You can do the same technique with the one on the left-hand side. Now you can see if you don't have a lot of paint on your brush, it makes a beautiful light brush stroke, and the leaves look very thinned out and quite natural. Don't try to be precise. Just let the brush do the work and the paint, let it do its own magic. Now here we tried again with a card, and again it didn't work very well. The paint was still too wet. So the Baohong paper really holds the water for quite a long time, which you need to take into account if you do want to use the credit card technique. And also if you want to make sure that you add your elements so that the paint doesn't spread. You know, it's very difficult if you have a wet surface and you are trying to add particular elements and that surface stays wet for such a long time. So it was quite a learning curve with the Baohong paper. It's wonderful to work with, but you need to learn how it behaves because every kind of paper behaves differently. Baohong and Potentate hold the water for a long time. And you can see even now we've been working quite a lot, and the splatters it just keeps fusing into the rest of the paint. Where if we used Windsor, for example, or Saunders Waterfit, then the paper dries a lot faster and the splatters will stay. So at the top you can see the paint there is dry, so the splatters stay and they create this idea of leaves falling. But at the bottom, it is still wet, so the splatters just fused into the paint. You can keep layering the leaves, adding a little bit more here and there, and then you can let the painting dry properly. Now, because we couldn't get the light back with a credit card that we usually do, we used an Eradicator brush, a Rosemary and Company Eradicator brush. This is a beautiful soft brush. It doesn't take a lot of work. You can literally just very lightly scrub on the area where you want to lift the paint and dab the excess water or excess paint out with a paper towel. Make sure to rinse the brush every time before you use it again, because you might transfer paint from one area to another if you don't do that, and that might ruin your painting, especially if you have quite a variety of colors. The natural texture of the Baohong paper gives a beautiful effect for the rocks in this painting. If you look in the middle, it really looks like there's texture in those rocks. And I think that's one of the reasons why Baohong is such a popular paper, actually. But it does take a little bit of getting used to. So wherever you want to have a little bit more light, you can use the Eradicator brush and lift out some of the paint. And it gives you the idea that there's a few rocks there that have sunlight on them. There's a few lines where the sand is shining through or showing through. So again, you can use your own imagination. Where do you want light? Where do you want dark? This type of landscape is easy to make because you can literally do whatever you want with it. There's no strict rule that you have to follow. As long as you have your contrasting light and dark, as you can see, especially in the tree there, then you will have a natural effect. If you find that your tree is a little bit bare, even though it is an autumn tree, you can add a few branches. In this case, we used a rigger or a liner brush to add a few branches just to make the tree a little bit fuller, because we want it to look like it is closer than the one on the left. So you add a bit more detail to the one on the right. That's one way of doing it. Or you can just make the one on the left a lot lighter. And then those trees in the distance, there you don't add a lot of detail. You can just maybe add a few strokes to show the tree trunks, and that would be sufficient. A liner brush is really one of the nicest things to use when you make trees, especially if you have to make these bare tree branches. It works so fast and so easy. So now we're going to add a little bit of grass here and there, or just a little bit more light to show grass or some other bushes that's growing there. And it just gives variety to your terrain and a little bit more texture. And you can see now the paint is starting to dry on the paper here. So it's getting a little bit more difficult to lift and to get the whiter areas. The bawang lifts easily, generally. But yeah, it's a paper that we still need to get to know. And that's about it. Quick and easy one. Thank you so much for staying with us, and please like, subscribe, and give us a comment on how you have found the bawang paper. Thank you for watching. Vaya con Dios.